The air in Hollow Creek hung heavy with the scent of damp leaves and rust, a fitting echo of a town that faded when the coal mines closed decades ago. Riley Carter trudged down Main Street, her boots kicking up dust from the cracked pavement. A grocery bag sagged in her arms, packed with cans of soup and a stale loaf of bread, barely enough to stretch the week. Beside her, Boone loped along, his long ears swaying, his nose twitching at every gust of wind. His scarred left ear, jagged from some old scuffle, flapped like a tattered flag. "Keep up, old man," Riley teased, casting a glance at the bloodhound. Boone's deep brown eyes met hers, steady and unhurried, as if to say, "I'm not the one chasing shadows." No. At 10 years old, he moved slower than most dogs, but his senses were sharp, sharper than Riley's, she'd admit. She'd inherited him 2 years ago when her grandfather, Sheriff Amos Carter, passed quietly in his sleep. She'd come to Hollow Creek to sell his crumbling cabin and leave. But Boone and a knot of unresolved guilt kept her here. The sky loomed low, grey clouds swirling over the forested hills. A storm was brewing. Riley felt it in her aching joints, the same way Boone sensed it in the charged air. She quickened her pace past the shuttered diner, its sign creaking in the wind. Hollow Creek Eats, best pie in WV. A hollow boast, she thought. The only thing served here was the bitter taste of a town forgotten. Boone stopped short, his nose dropping to the ground. A low hum rumbled in his chest. Not a growl, but a signal of something caught in his senses. Riley set the bag on a weathered bench, frowning. "What now? Chasing ghosts again?" she asked, but Boone's focus held firm. He snuffled the pavement, then veered into the alley beside the old post office. A brick husk, with broken windows staring blankly at the world. To Boone, the alley was alive with scents and sounds humans couldn't grasp. The wind carried whispers of pine and decay, but beneath it lurked something sharper. Sweat, fear, and a faint metallic tang. His ears caught a distant thud, like a pulse trapped under stone. Riley couldn't hear it, couldn't smell it, but she'd learned to trust Boone's nose. It had found her keys in the creek last spring, sniffed out a critter under the porch, even led her to Amos's hidden whiskey stash in the attic. When Boone tracked, it meant something. "All right, show me," she sighed, following him into the shadows. The air chilled, the alley narrowing around them. Boone's tail flicked once, a sign of purpose, before he stopped at a rusted cellar door set into the ground. Its chain hung loose, the lock tampered with, as if someone had forced it open and tried to hide it. Riley's stomach tightened. Hollow Creek was quiet but not empty. Whispers of drifters and old secrets clung to its bones. She pulled a multi-tool from her jacket, a holdover from her journalist days, and pried the lock free. The door groaned open, revealing a steep staircase plunging into darkness. Boone's ears lifted, his frame tensing. "You sure about this, buddy?" Riley asked, her voice softening. Boone stepped forward, claws clicking on the steps, his answer clear. Riley grabbed her flashlight and followed, the beam cutting through the gloom. The cellar smelled of mold and damp earth, its shelves cluttered with relics, dusty jars, rusted tools, a broken radio. Boone moved with purpose, his nose guiding him to a corner where the dirt floor looked freshly turned. He pawed at it, letting out a soft whine that sent a shiver through Riley. She knelt beside him, brushing the soil away. Beneath lay a wooden trapdoor, its edges worn but sturdy. A faint scratching echoed from below, desperate, alive. Riley's breath caught. She'd chased stories once. Corruption, mysteries, leads that cost her everything when she pushed too far. This felt like one of those moments, a clue begging to be uncovered. "What'd you find, Boone?" she murmured, lifting the trapdoor. Cold air rushed up, carrying a sound she couldn't ignore, a quiet sob. The flashlight revealed a narrow tunnel, its walls carved from the earth. Boone slipped inside, his lanky frame moving with quiet grace. Riley crawled after, her shoulders scraping the dirt. The passage sloped downward, the air thickening until it widened into a cavern, an old mine shaft, abandoned and forgotten. In the center, slumped against a rusted pipe, was a girl. She looked barely 16, her dark hair tangled, her clothes streaked with grime. Her eyes flickered toward the light, wide with fear, then hope. "Please help," she whispered, her voice raw. Boone reached her first, pressing his warm nose to her hand, a gentle whine escaping him. Riley scrambled over, dropping the flashlight as she fumbled with the ropes binding the girl's wrists. "Who did this?" she asked, her tone urgent but steady. "Men," the girl said, shivering. "They wouldn't let me go. I've been here days." Riley's heart sank. Hollow Creek was isolated, perfect for hiding trouble. She worked faster, cutting the ropes with her multi-tool. "We're getting out. What's your name?" "Ellie," the girl breathed, leaning on Boone for support as the ropes fell away. Riley steadied her, but Boone's head snapped toward the tunnel. A faint clatter echoed, something heavy shifting above. Someone was close. "Move!" Riley whispered, pushing Ellie toward the tunnel. Boone led the way, his ears pinned back, guiding them through the tight space. Riley's pulse raced as muffled voices drifted down, gruff, irritated, drawing nearer. "Faster, Boone!" she urged, though he was already ahead, his senses mapping the dark. They burst into the cellar just as footsteps thudded on the stairs. Riley slammed the trapdoor shut, dragging a shelf across it with a scrape. "Out the alley! Go!" she told Ellie, who stumbled toward the exit. Boone stayed by Riley's side, his growl a low rumble that filled the damp air. The trapdoor shuddered under a heavy thud, voices snarling through the wood. Riley grabbed a rusted pipe from the floor, clutching it tight. "You're not taking her back!" she shouted, her voice fierce despite the tremor in her hands. The trapdoor splintered, and a man emerged, broad-shouldered, bearded, his eyes glinting with anger. He lunged forward, but Boone darted in with a bark that echoed like thunder, forcing the man to stumble back with a curse. A second figure loomed behind, taller, shadowed, his hand raised with something gleaming faintly. "Enough of this!" he barked, his voice sharp. Before Riley could react, a sharp sound split the air, something striking the metal shelves, making them rattle. Boone yelped, staggering to one side, and Riley's heart stopped. "Boone!" she cried, spinning back. The first man was down, clutching his leg, but the second towered over Boone, who panted heavily on the dirt floor. "You're next!" the tall man growled, stepping closer. But Boone surged up, teeth bared, slamming into the man with a force that belied his age. The figure stumbled, crashing into the shelves with a groan. Riley seized the chance, grabbing Ellie and bolting outside. Rain lashed them as they ran, Boone limping behind. The storm had unleashed its fury, lightning clawing the sky. Riley's mind raced. The sheriff's station was miles away, too far with Boone struggling. She veered toward the cabin, her only sanctuary. "Hold on, Boone," she pleaded, her voice cracking. Ellie clung to her, trembling. But Boone's steady presence kept them moving, his resolve unshaken. Inside the cabin, Riley shoved a chair against the door, her hands shaking as she dialed 911. "Two men! They've got a girl! Hurry!" she shouted, the signal faltering in the storm. Boone sank by the hearth, his breathing uneven. Riley knelt beside him, pressing a towel to his side where he'd faltered. "You're staying with me, you hear?" she said, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. His brown eye locked on hers, calm and trusting even now. Ellie hovered nearby, whispering, "He saved me like he knew." Riley nodded, her throat tight. Boone had known, not the details, but the danger. His senses, his heart, They'd carried him through years of tracking, from Amos's days to this. Headlights cut through the windows as gravel crunched outside. Riley gripped the pipe, ready to fight. But the voices weren't the men's. "Sheriff's Department, open up!" Relief washed over her, though it didn't erase the tension. She let the deputies in, too late to catch the culprits, but in time for Boone. A paramedic checked him while another spoke to Ellie, who recounted being grabbed off Route 52 days ago. "They're gone," a deputy said, returning from the alley. Tracks washed out in the rain. Riley's jaw tightened. They'd slipped away, leaving only Boone's struggle behind. Later at the vet's, Boone rested, patched up and drowsy. Doc Hayes, a no-nonsense woman, shook her head. "He's a fighter." Took a hard knock, but he'll pull through. Riley knelt by his side, her fingers brushing his scarred ear. Boone's tail gave a weak wag, a quiet sign he was still with her. She exhaled, a shaky laugh escaping her lips. "You scared me, old man," she murmured, resting her forehead against his. He let out a soft whine, as if to say, "I'm not going anywhere." Ellie's parents arrived, tearful and grateful, vowing to help however they could. But Riley's thoughts drifted to the bearded man's words. That damn dog. He'd recognized Boone. Amos's old cases surfaced in her mind. Raids, arrests, shadows he'd chased. Had Boone been part of it? Had he crossed these men before? The storm faded to a drizzle as Riley drove home. Boone curled in the back seat. The cabin felt different now, a place tested, not broken. She dug through a drawer, finding Amos's old sheriff badge, its shine dulled but enduring. Beside it, a photo, Amos and Boone, younger, standing over a crate in the woods. On the back, in Amos's handwriting, "Good boy Boone, 2015. Riley looked at Boone, his chest rising steadily. "What else you keeping from me, old man?" she murmured. Outside, the forest stood silent, its secrets buried deep. Those men were out there, and Boone's past was tied to them. This wasn't the end. Not for her, not for him. She set the badge by Boone's bed, locking the door tight. Hollow Creek had more to tell, and they'd be ready. If Riley and Boone's story tugged at your heart, subscribe now. More mysteries from Hollow Creek are coming your way soon. Don't miss out.